Media fact-checker. Chelsea FC's humiliating Champions League exit against PSG in 2024 second-leg match. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chelsea lost to Paris Saint-Germain 3-0 in the Champions League second leg at the Parc des Princes, Paris, on, date implied, likely March 2024. Chelsea were eliminated from the Champions League with an 8-2 aggregate defeat after losing 5-2 in the first leg. Liam Rosenior is Chelsea's head coach and has faced criticism for his management style and team performance. Mamadou Sarr made a critical error leading to PSG's first goal, miscontrolling a free-kick punt by Matvei Safonov. Bradley Barcola scored PSG's second goal from a 20-yard strike into Robert Sanchez's top corner. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Chelsea played pretty well for part of the first leg, while Article 2 does not mention this and frames the first leg as a 3-goal deficit without praise. Article 1 attributes Chelsea's defensive issues to systemic failings redolent of Rosenior's Hull side, while Article 2 does not explicitly link Rosenior's Hull tenure to Chelsea's current struggles. Article 1 mentions Chelsea's £1.5 billion spending was achieved by illicit means, but Article 2 does not reference this financial controversy. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 2 men charged in fatal Bruce highway head-on crash involving stolen truck. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 26-year-old Caboolture man named Andre Roberts died after a head-on collision on the Bruce Highway near Burpengary on February 17 at approximately 10:30 p.m. A white Isuzu truck allegedly driven in the wrong direction, northbound lanes, struck Roberts' Honda Accord, causing it to burst into flames. A 46-year-old Redcliffe man was charged with 1 count of manslaughter and multiple theft-related charges, including 4 counts of entering premises to commit theft, 3 counts of stealing, 2 counts of receiving tainted property, and 1 count of unlawful use of a motor vehicle. A 42-year-old Narangba man was charged with 1 count of manslaughter and 1 count of dangerous operation of a vehicle causing grievous bodily harm. The Isuzu truck was allegedly stolen from a Hemant business and was being followed by a Ford Ranger in the moments leading up to the crash. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscamau does not mention the prior reports of multiple cars chasing the truck before the crash, while ABC explicitly states this occurred. ABC includes additional details about the truck's involvement in scrap theft and mentions 2 other Redcliffe men charged in relation to the truck, which are not referenced in Newscamau. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-China summit delay amid Iran war and Strait of Hormuz blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump announced on March 25 he asked China to delay his March 31 summit by a month or so due to the Iran war. The Strait of Hormuz carries 20% of the world's oil exports and significant gas shipments, with Iran blocking it since the US-Israel military strikes on February 28. Iran has allowed some non-hostile shipping, e.g., Indian and Turkish vessels, through the Strait of Hormuz while blocking US-allied tankers. China purchases roughly 90% of Iran's oil exports, with 11.7 million barrels sent to China via the strait since the war began, per tankertrackers.com data. US Supreme Court ruled most of Trump's tariffs, including those targeting China, were illegal on February 20, weakening his diplomatic leverage. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Trump initially linked the summit delay to China's refusal to help clear the Strait of Hormuz, but later officials said it was purely due to the war. The Guardian does not mention this shift in reasoning. ABC reports China has enough energy reserves to weather disruptions, implying limited leverage over Trump's Iran strategy. The Guardian does not provide this specific detail about China's energy reserves. ABC claims Trump dismissed NATO's relevance by saying we don't need people that join wars after we've already won. The Guardian does not reference this quote or Trump's past criticism of NATO. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran conflict escalation and its economic political fallout for Trump ahead of midterms. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Petrol prices in the US have risen by over 80 cents per gallon since the start of the Iran conflict. The Trump administration coordinated the largest ever release of emergency oil stocks, 400 million barrels, with G7 and IEA member countries. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve (SPR) contributed over a quarter of the 400 million barrels released, depleting it from 60% to 45% capacity. Each SPR cavern can hold oil equivalent to 2 stacked Empire State Buildings, with total capacity of 700 million barrels. Brent crude price exceeded $104 per barrel as the Strait of Hormuz remained closed for the first time in modern history. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Utah woman convicted of murdering her husband via fentanyl poisoning after financial and marital disputes. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Caree Richins was convicted of aggravated murder for poisoning her husband Eric Richins with fentanyl in March 2022 in Park City, Utah. The lethal dose of fentanyl was slipped into a cocktail Eric Richins drank at their home outside Park City, Utah. Caree Richins was $4.5 million in debt and falsely believed she would inherit Eric's estate worth over $4 million upon his death. Caree Richins was also convicted of attempted murder for a Valentine's Day 2022 incident where she allegedly poisoned Eric with a fentanyl-laced sandwich. Caree Richins was convicted of fraudulently claiming insurance benefits after Eric's death, with life insurance policies totaling $2 million opened without his knowledge. But not all outlets told the same story. The Age and Guardian both report Caree Richins was convicted of aggravated murder, but only Guardian specifies she received *5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl. The Age and Guardian mention Caree's internet searches for lethal dose of fentanyl and death certificate wording, but The Age includes luxury prisons for the rich America as a search term. This detail is not repeated in Guardian. The Age and Guardian both report Caree waived her right to testify and the defense rested without witnesses, but The Age emphasizes the defense's confidence in paper-thin evidence while Guardian does not include this exact phrasing. This story was covered by The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 2026 Six Nations Rugby Tournament Analysis and Player Rankings. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Louis Bielbayari scored a record 9 tries in a single Six Nations season, including 4 against England, and became the first player to score in every game in successive championships. Thomas Ramos scored the decisive final winning penalty for France against England in Paris, marking his 4th successive championship as top point scorer and placing him atop France's all-time list. Rhys Carr scored a try in 3 successive Test matches, becoming only the 6th prop in history to do so, and was Wales's leading point scorer in the 2026 Six Nations. Tommaso Menoncello scored a solo try in Italy's historic win over England and was praised for his speed, strength, and commitment as the best centre in Europe. Finn Russell was pivotal for Scotland, including his quick restart for Darcy Graham's crucial late try against Ireland in Cardiff. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 ranks Louis Bielbayari 11th in the best 15, while Article 2 consistently calls him the undisputed player of the tournament and top scorer. Article 1 lists Thomas Ramos as the top-ranked player, first, in the best 15, but Article 2 frequently downplays his ranking in favour of Bielbayari, calling Ramos high performance in action rather than the best. Article 1 does not mention Rhys Carr's try against Ireland as the most iconic or compare it to Usain Bolt, while Article 2 repeatedly calls it the Rhys Carr Award and a historic moment. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government considering reforms to capital gains tax discount amid housing crisis debates. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A Greens-led Senate inquiry, 2024, found the 50% capital gains tax, CGT, discount skews housing ownership toward investors, benefiting wealthier Australians and distorting productive investment. The inquiry report, 143 pages, was supported by Labor senators and called for the CGT discount to be abolished for investment properties and substantially reined in across asset classes. Committee Chair Senator Nick McKim, Greens, stated the CGT discount contributes to the housing crisis, wealth inequality, and intergenerational equity issues. Labor members acknowledged the 50% CGT discount for investors holding assets for at least a year has increased housing stock owned by investors rather than owner-occupiers. Liberal Senators Andrew Bragg and Dave Sharma dissented, arguing supply shortages, not tax tweaks, are the core cause of Australia's housing crisis. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Treasury is modelling a 33% CGT discount for housing investors, while ABC notes Treasury views any discount reduction as having a relatively small impact on house prices without specifying a target rate. ABC suggests a phase-in period or applying reforms only to new gains as transition mechanisms, but The Guardian does not mention these options. The Guardian quotes independent Senator David Pocock recommending a 25% discount for new homes and abolishing the discount for post-July 2024 purchases, while ABC does not reference this specific timeline or targeted approach. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Olympian Rohan Dennis Instagram post about a Porsche as a weapon amid his wife's fatal 2023 crash. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Rohan Dennis, former world champion cyclist and Australian Olympian, London 2012, was convicted in May 2024 of an aggravated charge of creating likelihood of harm after his wife Melissa Hoskins died in December 2023 when she was struck by his car during an argument about a kitchen renovation in Adelaide, South Australia. Dennis pleaded guilty to the charge and received a 17-month suspended jail sentence, 1 year and 4 months, and a 2-year good behavior bond, along with a 5-year driving ban. Melissa Hoskins, an Olympian and world champion cyclist, died after jumping onto the bonnet of Dennis's Volkswagen Amarok while he drove at tilde 20 km/h on Medindy Lane, Adelaide, then tripped and was dragged under the car on Avenel Gardens Road. Dennis posted a photo of a Porsche on Instagram on 2024-05XX with the caption "What an absolute weapon," sparking outrage and criticism from South Australia's Victims' Rights Commissioner Sarah Quick. Dennis's Instagram account was inactive since shortly before the crash but reactivated in early May 2024 with the Porsche post, followed by posts about his children as absolute weapons and a screenshot of a journalist's contact details. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Dennis posted a bike frame photo on Tuesday before the Porsche post, but Newscomau and ABC do not mention this. ABC states Dennis blocked the account that sent questions without replying, while Newscomau and The Guardian do not mention this interaction. The Guardian says Dennis appeared to have deleted his entire Instagram account, but Newscomau and ABC do not confirm this deletion. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Iranian women's football team returns home after some asylum seekers reverse asylum claims in Australia. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 7 members of Iran's women's national football team, 5 players, 1 staff member, and 1 player handler, initially sought asylum in Australia after the Women's Asian Cup in March 2024, with 2 players, Fatma Pasandadeh and Atfef Ramazanasadeh, remaining in Australia as of mid-March. 5 of the 7 asylum seekers, including Captain Zahra Ganbari, later withdrew their asylum claims and returned to Iran via Malaysia, Oman, and Turkey, arriving in early April 2024. The team's silence during Iran's national anthem at the Women's Asian Cup opening match in Australia, February 2024, sparked global attention and was interpreted as a protest against the Iranian regime. Iranian state media and officials, including Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, framed the players' return as a patriotic victory, with Ghalibaf calling them children of the homeland and praising their manly courage. The Iranian Football Federation president, Mehdi Taj, held a welcome ceremony for the returning players at the Gerbulak-Bazargan border crossing, with plans for a larger rally in Tehran's Valier Square. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and News Kamau claim Iranian staff member Zura Meshkinka relayed threats from Iranian authorities to players to convince them to return, but Australian government sources deny these claims. News Kamau and ABC report that Iranian authorities threatened families of players, e.g., summoning parents for questioning, while Iranian state media and officials dismissed these claims as false propaganda. ABC and News Kamau described the players' return as coerced or pressured, while Iranian state media and officials frame it as a voluntary, patriotic choice. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Sri Lanka and Asia's fuel crisis due to Iran-US-Israel war blocking Strait of Hormuz. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Sri Lanka introduced a 4-day work week for state institutions, schools, and universities starting Wednesday, with the change to remain indefinitely. News Kamau, ABC, Guardian. Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz on February 28, 2024, in retaliation for US-Israeli airstrikes, cutting 20 to 25% of global oil supply. News Kamau, 20%, ABC, 20%, Guardian, 20 to 25%. Sri Lanka's fuel rationing limits motorists to 15 litres of petrol diesel per week, while public transport gets up to 200 litres. News Kamau, ABC, Guardian. Sri Lanka's petrol and diesel reserves are estimated to last nearly 6 weeks, but officials warn disruptions could severely impact the island. News Kamau, ABC, Guardian. Sri Lanka's President Anura Kumara Dissanayake called an emergency meeting and stated, "We must prepare for the worst, but hope for the best." News Kamau, ABC, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states Sri Lanka's fuel rationing limits motorbikes to 15 litres per week, but ABC specifies motorbikes are limited to 5 litres per week. Guardian reports Bangladesh imposed scheduled power blackouts, while News Kamau does not mention this measure. ABC states Thailand is increasing coal power generation to preserve LNG supply, but News Kamau does not mention this detail. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Former Liberal staffer Bruce Lehrmann faces Queensland rape trial in November 2024. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Bruce Lehrmann, 30, is accused of 2 counts of rape in Toowoomba, Queensland, allegedly occurring in October 2021. The trial is scheduled to begin on November 2, 2024, in Toowoomba District Court. Judge Deborah Richards set the trial date during a court call-over on Wednesday, date not specified but implied recent. Lehrmann, formerly a Canberra-based Liberal staffer, was charged in January 2023 and committed for trial in July 2024. Lehrmann has denied the allegations and indicated he will contest the charges, though he has not yet formally entered a plea. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources for verifiable factual claims. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nicola Oleslages wins silver in women's high jump at 2024 World Indoor Championships in Poland. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nicola Oleslages finished in a 3-way silver medal share in the women's high jump at the 2024 World Indoor Championships in Torun, Poland. Yaroslava Mahuchik won gold in the women's high jump with a clearance of 2.01 meters. Oleslages cleared 1.99 meters, tying with Yulia Levchenko, Ukraine, and Angelina Topic, Serbia, for silver. All four top jumpers, Mahuchik, Olislages, Levchenko, Topic, cleared 1.99 meters on their first attempt. Eleanor Patterson, Australia, finished 7th with a clearance of 1.93 meters. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Hayley Kitching's semi-final heat time as 2 minutes and 0.99 seconds, while ABC reports it as 2 minutes and 0.09 seconds. The Guardian describes Eleanor Patterson as off her game and suffering a couple of early failures, while ABC does not mention her struggles. The Guardian notes Olislages was 3 closest rivals and couldn't be separated on countback, while ABC does not mention countback or rivals tie. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Kangaroo Island Council's proposed feral cat eradication policy and progress. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kangaroo Island Council is considering a last cat policy to ban new pet cats from the island as part of a feral cat eradication effort. Mayor Michael Pengelly stated the goal is to rid Kangaroo Island of feral cats and not allow any more cats in by 2030. The Dudley Peninsula project has removed 2,800 feral cats, leaving around 150 remaining, with a 95% reduction expected this winter. Feral cats contribute to a $12 million annual decline in sheep production due to toxoplasmosis, according to Mayor Pengelly and Jack Goff. The federal government provided $1.61 million in December 2023, with an additional $800,000 from the state government in March 2024 for the project. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian economic fears over US-Iran conflict and domestic policy fallout. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Barry Cassidy and Tony Barry discuss the fuel crisis in Australia linked to economic fallout from a potential Iran war. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, has raised the cash rate. Treasurer Jim Chalmers is described as opening the door for a recession. Liberal MP Andrew Hastie criticises US President Trump's stance on Iran. The Albanese government faces public blame for economic fallout from Trump's Iran policies. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. FCC Chair Brendan Carr and Trump threaten media licenses over Iran war coverage and fake news. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Brendan Carr, Chair of the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, threatened to revoke broadcast licenses of news organizations reporting unfavorably on the Iran war, stating broadcasters must operate in the public interest and will lose their licenses if they do not. Article 1, Article 2. Donald Trump praised Carr's threats on Truth Social, calling some news outlets corrupt and highly unpatriotic and stating he was thrilled that Carr was looking at the licenses of some of these news organizations. Article 1. Carr stated in an interview with Reuters that he could accelerate reviews of licenses held by broadcast television stations and that all of that stuff is on the table regarding revoking licenses. Article 1. Carr previously called for broadcasters to air patriotic, pro-America content celebrating the Trump administration, including during America's 250th anniversary. Article 1. Pete Hegseth, former Fox News host and current U.S. Defense Secretary, criticized CNN for unflattering photos and called for David Ellison to take over the network. Article 1. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Trump accused media outlets of treason for disseminating AI-generated images of a burning U.S. aircraft carrier, but Article 2 does not mention this specific accusation or the treason claim. Article 1 includes Trump's direct quote about ABC News from 2023 regarding the Epstein files, while Article 2 does not reference this incident. Article 1 describes Trump's claim that Iran is working in close coordination with the fake news media in disseminating AI fakes, but Article 2 does not mention this specific claim of coordination between Iran and media outlets. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Teen stabbing incident at Melbourne shopping centre and related crime updates. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 25-year-old woman was stabbed while walking to work at M-City Shopping Centre, Clayton, around 7:30 to 7:50 a.m. on Thursday. A 16-year-old boy was arrested and charged with intentionally causing injury, recklessly causing injury, assaulting with a weapon, and possessing a controlled weapon. The victim was taken to the Alfred Hospital with upper body injuries and remained in a serious but stable condition. A passerby called 000-000 after the stabbing and helped the victim. The suspect was arrested at a medical center in Clayton soon after the incident. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the victim was inside the shopping center when stabbed, while Theej says she was walking through it. ABC does not mention the suspect being on bail, but Theej states the suspect was on bail before the attack. ABC reports the stabbing occurred at 7:30 a.m., while Theej says it happened at 7:50 a.m. This story was covered by ABC News and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Boat capsizes off Tasmania's northwest coast, 3 rescued, 1 missing man's body found. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 4 people, 3 adults, ages 33, 27, and a 6-year-old child left Montague boat ramp west of Smithton at 5:30 p.m. Saturday for a fishing trip. The boat capsized broke up around 9 p.m. Saturday, throwing all 4 into the water. 3 survivors, 33-year-old man, 27-year-old woman, 6-year-old child, were rescued 1 p.m. Sunday near Robbins Island and taken to Northwest Regional Hospital for observation. The missing 35-year-old man's body was found on Monday morning on the eastern side of Robbins Island. All 3 rescued individuals were wearing life jackets. The 35-year-old man was not wearing one at the time of the incident. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 says the boat capsized at 9 p.m. Saturday, while Article 2 says it broke up at the same time. Article 1 states the 3 survivors were found on Big Stony Island north of Robbins Island, while Article 2 says they were found in Robbins Passage Star. Article 1 notes the 35-year-old man was not wearing a life jacket at all, while Article 1's Inspector Maingay implies he had one on temporarily star. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Victorian government finalises planning reforms for high-density housing near transport hubs in Melbourne. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Victorian government finalised planning controls for 25 of 60 activity centres or transport zones, including Brighton, Hawthorn, West Footscray, Heidelberg, Thornbury, Oakley, Middle Brighton, and Kew Junction, to increase housing density near transport hubs. The finalised maps allow buildings of up to 20 stories in select parts of Brunswick and Coburg, Melbourne's north, while other areas like Middle Brighton have height limits of up to 12 stories. The draft maps for Coburg and Brunswick previously proposed a maximum height limit of 16 stories, which was increased to 20 stories in the finalised plans. The government received feedback from over 12,500 Victorians, which directly shaped the final plans, including changes to height limits and greener streetscapes. The state government aims to create capacity for 300,000 homes by 2051 through these reforms, though a Grattan Institute report suggests only about 110,000 are financially feasible under current conditions. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports height limits in Oakley's Eaton Mall area were reduced from 12 to 6 stories, while Theej does not mention this specific reduction. ABC states the finalised zones include Brighton, Hawthorn, West Footscray, Heidelberg, and Thornbury, but Thij does not list these suburbs explicitly in its summary. ABC highlights that the Liberal opposition wants to supercharge high-density development in Melbourne's CBD and inner suburbs, while Thij describes the coalition's plan as returning powers to local councils with scaled-down developments in middle suburbs. This story was covered by ABC News and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian universities' misuse of confidentiality clauses in student complaints, especially sexual harassment cases. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The National Student Ombudsman, NSO, report found that 21 out of 44 Australian universities use confidentiality clauses in student complaints, including those about gender-based violence. The University of Technology Sydney, UTS, James Cook University, JCU, and the University of Newcastle were specifically named for breaching trauma-informed practices due to improper confidentiality clause applications. UTS was ordered to apologise to a student named Hayley, pseudonym, for effectively silencing her after she complained of sexual harassment and was later investigated for alleged confidentiality breaches. The NSO report concluded that UTS's confidentiality demands were unreasonable and needlessly oppressive, leading to Hayley feeling isolated and traumatized. The NSO was established in February 2025 as an independent service to address systemic failures in university complaint handling, receiving over 2,200 complaints in its first 6 months. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states UTS told the NSO it placed no restriction on students discussing complaints with family and friends, but ABC notes Hayley felt restricted from talking to friends beyond her immediate support network. News Kamau reports that UTS told the student she could discuss her experience with others outside the complaint process, while ABC emphasizes that Hayley felt isolated and unable to talk to friends who were part of her journey. News Kamau does not mention the specific plan by UTS to inform the Law Society about the lack of substantiation, which ABC highlights as a separate issue where UTS later apologized. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's February 2024 unemployment rate rise and RBA monetary policy implications. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia's unemployment rate rose to 4.3% in February from 4.1% in January, both sources. Economists forecasted 20,000 new jobs in February, but actual employment grew by 48,000 to 48,900, News Kamau, 48,000, ABC, 48,900. Full-time employment decreased by 30,500, News Kamau, or 30,000, ABC, in February, while part-time employment increased by 79,400, News Kamau, or 79,000, ABC. The participation rate rose to 66.9% in February from 66.7% in January. ABC only mentions 66.9%, News Kamau does not specify but confirms a rise. The Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, increased the official cash rate to 4.1% on the 20th of February, 2024, both sources. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the total employed reached 14,748,700, exact, while ABC rounds this to 14.7 million without specifying the exact figure. News Kamau reports the unemployment rate rose from 4.1% to 4.3% over the December quarter, was tipped to rise to 4.4% but came in at 4.2%, implying an average, while ABC does not mention this forecast or average. News Kamau does not specify the exact number of unemployed people growing, only mentions 35,000 in ABC, though both agree on the 0.2 percentage point rise. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Iran's closure threats and attacks on the Strait of Hormuz during US-Israel war. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway at the mouth of the Persian Gulf where 20% of the world's oil normally flows, connecting the Gulf to the Arabian Sea. Iran has threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz since the US and Israel launched military operations against Iran in early 2024, with Revolutionary Guard (IRGC) radios broadcasting a message forbidding navigation through the strait. Iran has attacked at least 20 vessels in confirmed incidents since March 1, 2024, including unmanned speedboats ramming ships like the US-owned Safe Sea Vishnu and Greek-owned Zephyros. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz dropped dramatically from over 2,000 vessels in mid-February 2024 to just 166 vessels by early March 2024, according to marine traffic data. The strait's narrowest point is 30 kilometers wide, with two 3.2-kilometer wide shipping lanes confined between Iran, north, and Oman, south, each country having 12 nautical miles of territorial waters. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian does not mention Iran's explicit IRGC announcement forbidding navigation, while ABC explicitly reports this as a direct quote from Iranian radios. The Guardian focuses on economic pressure as the primary leverage Iran holds, while ABC emphasizes Iran's military and asymmetric warfare tactics, drones, missiles, as the core strategy. ABC states Iran's closure is a last resort due to its own oil exports, but The Guardian implies Iran is using it as a calculated move to force the US to reconsider the war. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government response to fuel crisis amid Middle East conflict and Strait of Hormuz blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese is convening a national cabinet meeting on the 23rd of May, 2024 to coordinate fuel supply responses across states and territories, ABC, Newscomau, Guardian, Newscomau. The Strait of Hormuz carries about 20% of global oil supply, SMH, Thij, ABC, Guardian. Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz has caused fuel price spikes and shortages in Australia, SMH, Newscomau, ABC, Thij, Guardian. Australia has released up to 20% of its domestic petrol and diesel reserves to address regional shortages, Newscomau, ABC, Guardian. Energy Minister Chris Bowen warned of bumpy supply from June 2024 due to reduced Middle Eastern crude oil availability, SMH, Thij. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH and Thij report that the coalition is floating the idea of lifting Russian fertilizer sanctions, but Newscomau and ABC do not mention this explicitly. ABC and Guardian state fuel supply remains very solid with no major disruptions yet, while SMH and Thij warn of bumpy supply from June 2024 and cancelled shipments. Newscomau attributes shortages to massive surge in demand, while SMH and Thij emphasize supply chain disruptions and potential future shortages. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. NFL player Cam Scatterbo's controversial denial of CTE and asthma legitimacy sparks backlash and apology. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Cam Scatterbo is a 24-year-old running back for the New York Giants, a fourth-round pick from Arizona State in the 2025 NFL Draft. Scatterbo made comments on the Bring the Juice podcast dismissing chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, as an excuse and asthma as fake, stating "Yeah, asthma's fake too and just breathe air." CTE is a degenerative brain condition linked to repeated head trauma, marked by abnormal tau protein buildup and symptoms including cognitive decline, mood changes, and dementia. It can only be diagnosed posthumously. A 2017 Boston University study found CTE in 110 of 111 former NFL players examined, with the NFL acknowledging a link between football and CTE in 2016. Scatterbo's rookie season in 2025 included 410 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns across 8 games before an ankle injury ended it early. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Scatterbo's rookie season included 410 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns, while Article 2 states he scored 7 touchdowns and ran for 410 yards. Article 1 does not mention Scatterbo's mother's response or her personal experience with asthma, which is detailed in Article 2. Article 1 references a 2023 Boston University study finding CTE in roughly 92% of former NFL players, while Article 2 cites a 2017 study finding CTE in 110 of 111 players examined. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump criticizes Australia and NATO allies over Iran war and Strait of Hormuz blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump publicly stated on social media that the US no longer needs or desires NATO countries' assistance in the Iran war, writing "We never did." Guardian, The Age, SMH, News Corp AU, ABC. Trump named Australia, Japan, South Korea, and NATO as allies who refused to send warships to the Strait of Hormuz. Guardian, The Age, SMH, News Corp AU, ABC. Iran has effectively blocked the Strait of Hormuz since the US-Israel strikes on Iran began 3 weeks ago in February, causing global oil supply disruptions. Guardian, The Age, SMH, ABC. Australia's Transport Minister Catherine King confirmed Australia would not send a ship to the Strait of Hormuz, stating "We won't be sending a ship." The Age, SMH, ABC, News Corp AU. The International Energy Agency warned the Iran conflict is the greatest threat to global energy supply in history of the world. Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Article 1, states Trump did not answer when asked what Australia had said no to, while The Age, Article 2, and ABC, Article 4, report Australia explicitly ruled out sending ships to the Strait of Hormuz. The Guardian, Article 1, reports Trump slammed Japan, Australia, and South Korea for saying they would not be sending warships to the Gulf earlier in the week, but The Age, Article 2, states Trump had not mentioned Australia in his previous public requests for help. The Guardian, Article 3, states Trump's social media post was overnight, while The Age, Article 2, and ABC, Article 4, report it was posted on Tuesday, US time, and later in the day. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff strike over pay dispute and unresolved union demands. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. More than 75% of ABC staff, 75% of total workforce, will walk off the job for 24 hours starting at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, the first strike in 20 years. The draft enterprise agreement rejected by staff offered a 10% total pay rise over 3 years, 3.5% in year 1, 3.25% in years 2 and 3. 60% of ABC staff voted no to the revised enterprise agreement, with 40% voting yes, per news.com.au, or 75% of the workforce voting no, per Guardian. Unions, MEAA and CPSU, cited concerns about staff appraisal processes, career progression, night shift penalty rates, and reproductive health leave as unresolved issues. The last ABC strike occurred in 2006, causing major disruptions to TV and radio services. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states 60% of ABC staff voted no to the agreement, while news.com.au reports only 40% of voters supported it, implying 60% voted no, but the exact percentage of no votes is not directly stated in news.com.au. The Guardian mentions a 75% participation rate in the ballot, while news.com.au does not specify the participation rate. The Guardian reports the one-off $1,000 payment was excluded for casual staff, but news.com.au does not mention this detail. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Coronial inquest into Bradley Murdoch's death and his refusal to disclose Peter Falconio's remains. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Bradley Murdoch was sentenced to life imprisonment in 2005 for the murder of Peter Falconio and attempted kidnapping of Joanne Lees, with a non-parole period of 28 years. Murdoch died from stage 4 cancer, throat cancer, in Alice Springs Hospital's palliative care unit on July 16, 2025, after 22 years in prison. Police made 2 attempts to convince Murdoch to reveal Falconio's remains in the weeks before his death, one visit to the prison on June 25, 2025, and another brief visit to his palliative care bed. Murdoch refused to watch a video of Falconio's parents shown by police during the June 25 visit and yelled at police to get out during the July visit. A $500,000 reward remains for information leading to Falconio's remains, which have never been found. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Murdoch's cancer was diagnosed in November 2024 after a neck lump complaint, while The Guardian does not specify the exact diagnosis timeline. ABC highlights occasional delays in medical treatment were acknowledged but no missed opportunity for earlier diagnosis, while The Guardian focuses on Murdoch's verbal abuse of staff and refusal of radiotherapy. The Guardian describes Murdoch's final interaction with police as yelling "get out" at his bedside, while ABC does not mention this specific phrase but notes a 30-second visit. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Trump orders ICE agents to US airports amid DHS funding shutdown and TSA staff shortages. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump threatened to deploy ICE agents to US airports starting Monday, the 24th of March, 2026, if Democrats did not agree to DHS funding, per Guardian, Articles 1, 2, 3, and ABC, Articles 4, 5. Over 400 TSA workers have quit since the partial government shutdown began on the 14th of February, 2026, per Guardian, Articles 1, 2, 3, and ABC, Articles 4, 5. TSA workers are set to miss their second full paycheck on the 27th of March, 2026 due to the partial shutdown, per Guardian, Articles 1, 2, and ABC, Article 5. The partial shutdown of DHS began on the 14th of February, 2026 and is in its 36th day as of the 20th of March, 2026, per Guardian, Articles 1, 2, 3, and ABC, Articles 4, 5. ICE agents are not specifically trained for airport security, which is TSA's domain, per Guardian, Articles 1, 2, 3, and ABC, Articles 4, 5. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian, Article 1, states Trump's deployment was framed as retaliation for radical left Democrats, while ABC, Article 4, does not emphasize partisan framing in the same way. Guardian, Article 3, reports ICE's specific duties at airports were still being finalized on Sunday, while ABC, Article 4, states Homan pledged a plan by the end of today for deployment details. Guardian, Article 1, claims Trump's deployment was tied to immediate arrest of all illegal immigrants, but ABC, Articles 4, 5, does not mention this specific detail. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Indonesian activist Andri Yunus acid attack and militarization concerns under Prabowo Subianto. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Andri Yunus, deputy coordinator of Contra-S, suffered serious burns covering over 20% of his body in an acid attack in Jakarta on date not specified but within last week of March 2025. 4 Indonesian military officers, ranks, captain, first lieutenant, second sergeant, from the Indonesian Armed Forces Strategic Intelligence Agency were arrested over the attack. The attack occurred as Yunus rode his motorbike home after recording a podcast on remilitarization and judicial review of Indonesia's military law. President Prabowo Subianto condemned the attack as terrorism and vowed to investigate whoever ordered and financed it, stating there would be no impunity. The attack is linked to Yunus's activism against legislative changes allowing military personnel broader government roles, criticized as a return to Suharto-era authoritarianism. But not all outlets told the same story. Source ABC states the acid attack occurred a week ago, implying recent timing, while Source ABC also references events from March 2025 without specifying exact timing, no direct contradiction but vague temporal framing. The military, ABC, arrested 4 officers from the Strategic Intelligence Agency, but Source ABC also notes the National Police believe there are only 2 suspects, creating a discrepancy in the number of suspects. Source ABC mentions the 4 arrested officers have not been formally declared as suspects, while Source ABC does not clarify this distinction in the second article. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia approves massive coal seam gas expansion in Queensland until 2081. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The federal government approved a coal seam gas expansion project, Australia Pacific LNG, in Queensland's Surat and Bowen basins until 2081. The project includes up to 1,695 new gas wells, 1,545 kilometers of gas and water pipelines, and 3 processing facilities. The project is expected to produce about 2,033 petajoules of gas and operate until 2061, with an extension to 2081 for environmental compliance. The project's public environment report estimated 9 tons of CO2 emissions during construction and operation, plus 111 tons from burning the gas. Australia Pacific LNG is a joint venture of ConocoPhillips, Origin Energy, and Sinopec. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports 126 environmental conditions, while ABC states over 120 conditions, no exact number. The Guardian mentions 111 tons of CO2 from burning gas, but ABC does not specify this exact figure. The Guardian highlights the project's lifetime emissions as 120 tons, while ABC focuses on construction operation emissions separately, 9 tons. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Leadership crisis and potential spill in Victorian Labor Party ahead of 2024 election. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jacinta Allan became Victorian Premier in September 2023 after Daniel Andrews stepped down. The Victorian state election is scheduled for November 2024, less than 9 months away. Jacinta Allan's net approval rating stands at -37% according to a Demos AU poll, Herald Sun, and Resolve polling, Age. Ben Carroll, Deputy Premier, Education Minister, Right Faction, and Gabrielle Williams, Transport Infrastructure Minister, Left Faction, are the most commonly named potential leadership contenders. Jacinta Allan dismissed leadership speculation as anonymous gossip and scallywag gossip, calling it a couple, handful of scallywags. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and The Age report that a leadership challenge is not imminent, but Guardian suggests it could happen soon if the left faction moves before the May budget or election. ABC states that no one has suggested counting numbers for a challenge, while Guardian reports that some MPs are creating their own weather and doing the numbers privately. The Age reports that factional power brokers tried and failed to move against Allan a year ago due to federal election results, but Guardian implies the right faction is still hesitant without left support. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.